Hello, everybody. It's me, Ian Rodriguez. You're joining us. Today is day 6. So today we are going to be continuing with what we would call the Sermon on the Mount. So the Sermon on the Mount began yesterday when we were in chapter 5, learning about what it is to live a blessed life. We learned about the Beatitudes and the kingdom principles that sometimes look a little bit upside down, right, from the rest of the world. And then he talked about how we are meant to be the salt and the light. And he is talking, right, to a select few. And I want you to understand that as he's preaching, more and more people have been climbing this mountain to hear from Jesus. They are so astonished at his authority and the way that he's preaching and the things that he's saying. And he turns and he tells them that he is not there to abolish the law of Moses or the commandments or the law of the prophets. He's actually meant to complete it. He's meant to fulfill it. And then he begins to make some of those commandments that we all know stricter. He begins to tighten them up a little bit, talking a little bit about murder, how you don't necessarily even have to murder someone in order to have a murderous spirit towards someone, that the enemy can take advantage of that hatred and that anger, and that just doing that creates murder on your neighbor, on your brother or sister. Just thinking thoughts of hatred or wishing hate upon other people is just as if you were killing people. So this is very strict. And so he's creating this atmosphere where he's trying to teach them some kingdom principles about how to live, how to bear fruit, how to be mature in Christ. Then he talks about adultery and divorce. So Jesus is addressing the fact that some of the people, especially in his culture, have been taking advantage of giving out divorce certificates, that they were divorcing their wives just on a whim, whether she burnt the bread or she overcooked his meat, or whether he just didn't want to be married to her anymore. And he could just give her, sign a certificate of divorce and literally leave her out on the street having to fend for herself. So God's design in marriage is meant for protection, especially for wives and children, and husbands were to cover, protect, and defend their families. And so what he was seeing is that people were taking advantage of that. And so then he begins to talk about letting your yes be yes and your no be no, and meaning the things that you're saying, and really being careful about the things that come out of your mouth, that there's power of life and death in the tongue. And then he begins to talk about loving your enemies, loving the unlovable. And he begins to tell them too, if somebody wants to slap you on one side of the cheek, go ahead and offer him the other. If somebody wants you to take their luggage a mile, go ahead and take it too. Now, yesterday I didn't get to share this, but in the Jewish culture, especially for anybody who would be considered a slave, somebody of lower social status, if somebody of higher position or status was to walk by and say, hey, help me carry this luggage or help me carry this bag, that person was required to carry that bag for a mile out of their way. It didn't matter. They were meant to not say no to this person. They had to actually go ahead and take that upon themselves, and they had to carry it a mile. What Jesus was saying is, don't just take it a mile, go ahead and take it 2 miles. So he was saying, even when people take advantage of you, even when people use you, he said, I don't want you to get caught up in petty arguments and things that destroy relationships, the right fighting. He said, I want unity in the body, unity in the church, unity within the brothers and sisters. And so he begins to talk about these things with them there on the Sermon on the Mount. And today he is going to continue giving us some truth. So I want you to imagine, just like we did yesterday, that Jesus is inviting you close. He's inviting you in. He's inviting you into this quiet, secluded place. And as you're there, many other people begin to climb that mountain to be near you as well, and to hear Jesus giving instruction, and he's preaching in such a way that's drawing the attention and probably changing the heart posture of many people who are there. Today, chapter 6, starting in verse 1, the title here in the message over this for me is "The World is Not a Stage." I love this, and I want to pause right here because especially in our ministry, give that girl a mic, right? Many people think that we're all about the platforms, that maybe we're all about the microphone and the projection, and it really has nothing to do with what we say, but how we live. One of the mandates that's upon my life in this ministry is to help the altar of God become holy and separate again, that the fire and the embers of the holy altar begin to burn, and that we are not preoccupied with what man has to say about it, but that we return to the holy fear of the Lord, knowing that one day we're going to answer to him. And so with this posture, we see Jesus now addressing them about this kind of people pleasing, about this kind of performing that they want to do, and really that it's best to live their life in secret and in secret places, not letting everybody publicly know what you're doing in private. Just know that it's going to come out as fruit already, and you don't have to prove it to anybody. And so he begins to talk about some principles about what it means to go into the secret place and what it means to do things in secret. I want to be a little preemptive in this and let you know that. I know we're living in a generation that wants to take a lot of credit for the things that we're doing. You know, we want to take credit for when we're fasting and when we're praying and when we're going to church. We're even posting a lot of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just sometimes we put a lot of stock in what we're doing, right? That we're putting a lot of stock in what we're doing and how other people might perceive what we're doing. And then there are some things that God may call you to do in secret and in private that you may feel sometimes. I know I've had this at times kind of grip me where I just want to tell somebody. I just want to tell somebody that I just did this. I want to tell and proclaim it to the rooftops. And then there are some moments that God reminds me, he's like, why do you need to do that? I see everything that you're doing. You don't have to tell people that you're fasting. You don't have to tell people every single time you take lunch out less fortunate. You don't have to tell people and proclaim the things that you're doing, every prayer meeting and all of that kind of stuff. And so it really, especially if your life, like much like mine, is on social media and people are watching, there's a lot of things that God had me pull back on that were just between me and the Lord. And sometimes even just between our ministry and the Lord. And not everybody may know every move that you're making. And guess what? It's okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those private, secret moves that God sees, that God honors, that nobody has to even know about. It says, be especially careful when you're trying to be good so that you don't make a performance out of it. Whoa. It might be good theater, but the God who made you won't be applauding. Wow. Because he knows the posture of our heart, whether we're pretending and performing, and he's not happy when we do that. He says, when you do something for someone else, don't call attention to yourself. You've seen them in action, I'm sure. Play actors, I call them, treating prayer meetings and street corners alike as a stage. Acting compassionate as long as someone is watching, playing to the crowds. They get an applause, true, but that's all they get. When you help someone out, don't think about how it looks. Just do it, quiet and unobtrusively. That is the way your God, who conceived you in love, working behind the scenes, helps you out. I want you to think about this right now. God is working behind the scenes, and he's the only one who can get the glory for things when we get out of the way. Okay? He's the only one who can make miracles happen, make the mountain move in your situation, and it all isn't out in display. That whenever you're doing things for other people, that you don't have to call attention to yourself and say, hey, over here, look what I'm doing. Y'all, and sometimes that's part of it is we want to share, obviously, as a testimony of what we're doing. I think that's a little bit different. What he's talking about is how we want to wave everybody down while we're doing that very thing, right? That is supposed to make us look holy and righteous. That's supposed to make us look like we're good little Christians. And yet God sees our heart posture, that we're all about pretending and performing, and that it doesn't serve his kingdom well when we do that. And any applause that we get from that, that's all the reward that there is. There's not something in eternity stored up because we would have received it already. This is powerful. So then he says, pray with simplicity. And when you come before God, don't turn that into a theatrical production either. All these people making a regular show out of their prayers, hoping for stardom. Do you think God sits in a box seat? Whoa, the message is so good, is it not? I mean, we should not make prayer into this big theatrical production like God's in the box seat, is what he's saying at the opera, where we're there in these grand prayers and all these words just to be able to dazzle an audience. When we are praying to an audience of one. Powerful. It says, here's what I want you to do. Find a quiet, secluded place so that you won't be tempted to role play before God. Get somewhere in secret. Get into your war room. Get into that secret place. Get, in your living room when all your kids have already gone to school, and get on your face before God where you're not worried about who's going to walk in and who's going to see you. Get into a place where you get over yourself. Come on. And just be there as simply and honestly as you can manage. The focus will shift from you to God, and you will begin to sense his grace. Now, I want to say something about this, because I think that we want to be able to train ourselves as ambassadors of Christ to be able to do what Jesus calls pray without ceasing. But there are also these moments of intentional prayer to get into the place that you need to with God. Sometimes you have to create that space either in your home. For some of you, it might be your car ride, on your way to work. That after you have dropped the kids off to school or whatever it is, or maybe it's early in the morning, you get up before everybody else gets up, or maybe it's right before you go to sleep, you pull all these things out, maybe sit at your kitchen table. I know people do this so many different ways just to be intentional with their prayer life. And I want you to understand that this is not a place of pretense. This is a place where we can actually focus in on God, and we're going to begin to sense and feel his grace come upon us. Pastora Pat from Arise Church always says this, that you have to pray until you don't feel yourself no more. We have to get into these spiritual stances to be able to have this kind of maturity where you get to a place where you are trying to remove your flesh, where you're dying to yourself, where it gets uncomfortable. Maybe the ugly cry comes, whatever it is, until you begin to feel the Holy Spirit and his grace coming upon you. And sometimes I'm afraid it's not going to happen in no 5-minute prayer travail. It just doesn't. You're going to have to really press in, because we live in a fallen world and we have all these situations vying for our attention, and we've got to be intentional with our prayer life in this way. And so this is what we find here that Jesus is talking about, the intentionality of the secret place, of that place where we then can pray to God, and it's just not in our flesh, it's not out of performance, but then we begin to feel God's grace there. It says the world is full of so-called prayer warriors who are prayer ignorant. They're full of formulas and programs and advice, peddling techniques for getting what you want from God. Don't fall for that nonsense, okay? Don't fall for the programs and the pretense and the techniques. Come to him humbly and honestly and real and raw. This is your Father you're dealing with, and he knows better than you what you need. With a God like this loving you, you can pray simply, and this is where he gives the Lord's Prayer. So this is what is so interesting, is that in other Gospels as well, the disciples ask Jesus, Jesus, teach us how to pray. They see something about Jesus's prayer life, his communication with his Father. They see it there and they're asking him, show us how to do this, Jesus. And so instead of condemning them, instead of going, oh my goodness, you don't know how to pray, he just shows them. He's the teacher, he's the rabbi. And so it's written here in Matthew so that he can teach us how to pray. Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Set the world right. Do what's best, as above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You are in charge. You can do anything you want. You ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes. And this is the Message version that I just read. But I remember being a kiddo memorizing the version that you are probably reading along with me today. Our Father who art in heaven, who is seated there, right? Hallowed be thy name. Holy and highly revered is your name. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. Not the kingdoms of the earth, but the kingdom that'll never fail, that'll never come down. The one true kingdom, the kingdom of heaven, right? Thy kingdom come where? To earth, into my situation, into my home. Thy kingdom come. Let it be the way it is there, right here manifested in my life. That the way that it is there, let that be here. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This is powerful that Jesus is saying the way that the kingdom has been established in heaven can actually be a part of our lives here on earth. Wow. He says, right? Give us this day our daily bread, that we are not hungry, so that today we may eat. And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So help me to forgive so that I can be forgiven. And lead me not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. God, every time there's temptation, let me see the exit. Help me, God, get out of temptation so that the enemy doesn't have me under his thumb. He says, lead me not into temptation, but deliver me from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. And it says here in the Message, yes, yes, yes. 3 holy yeses. Let it be as you have said, God. Let it be just as Jesus has declared how we should pray to the Father. You know, and many of you, maybe you're wanting to learn how to pray. Maybe this is a deep desire that you have, that you maybe have heard other people with eloquent prayer lives, and you're like, I want that. Just pray the way Jesus told us to pray. If that means memorize a beautiful version that you understand, that every time you begin to pray, let it intentionally come into your mind and your heart as you're declaring these words. Don't let it be, just as he said earlier, just a formula, just something that we say. No, it needs to come from the heart. It needs to come and penetrate our minds so that we know we're not just mindlessly repeating something. No, we are projecting it forth, and we are prophesying, and we are declaring these things once again. It says in prayer, there is a connection between what God does and what you do. It says you can't get forgiveness from God, for instance, without also forgiving others. If you refuse to do your part, you cut yourself off from God's part. And actually in your version, it may say that if you don't forgive, God will not forgive you. This is why forgiveness is so important, especially in deliverance. If you want to be set free, you are going to have to release people, not because what they did is now excused. It's that now you're going to let God handle that person. And all you're going to do is go through the process, even if it's moment by moment, day by day, begin to forgive even the unforgettable things that have happened to you in your life. Why? Because if you don't forgive, God will not forgive you. It's in the word. This is not my opinion. I'm not being harsh with you when I say that. There have been things that have happened to me that I'm like, God, I deserve to be angry. God, I deserve some type of revenge, some type of anger towards the situation. And God is saying, look to me because I have forgiven you of the unforgivable that you have done. I have forgiven you and now you are set free. So then why would you then not forgive others? Because if we refuse to forgive other people, God is not able then to forgive us. It says, when you practice some appetite denying discipline or fasting, do to better concentrate on God. Don't make a production out of it. It might turn you into a small-time celebrity, but it won't make you a saint. Don't go around telling everybody how hungry you are because you're fasting. He says that right in your word. It says, if you go into training inwardly, act normal outwardly. Nobody should know and be able to tell when you're fasting. Put a smile on your face. Don't be hangry with everybody, okay? Go forth in God knowing that He is going to bear fruit from that fasting in your life. And you don't have to let everybody know either that you're doing that. Shampoo and comb your hair, brush your teeth, wash your face. God doesn't require attention-getting devices. He won't overlook what you're doing. He'll reward you well. Who is it then, right? Jesus is saying, is really watching us when we're doing these things. We don't need to let the whole world know then what all we're doing. Wash your face, brush your teeth, brush your hair. Get up. Even though you're hungry, go and do those things that you have said you would do. So a life of God worship. Don't hoard treasure down here where it gets eaten by moths and corroded by rust, or worse, stolen by burglars. Stockpile treasures in heaven where it is safe from moth and rust and burglars. It's obvious, isn't it? The place where your treasure is the place you will most want to be and end up being. Your eyes are windows into your body, and if you open your eyes wide in wonder and belief, your body fills up with light. And if you live squinty-eyed in greed and distrust, your body is a dank cellar. If you pull the blinds on your windows, what a dark life you will have. It says you can't worship two gods at once. Loving one God, you'll end up hating the other. Adoration for one feeds contempt for the other. You can't worship God and mammon, or some of your versions may say money, but it's not necessarily money. It's the love of money. And mammon itself is a principality in the second heaven. It is a demonic principality where people who are filled with greed and lust for money and pride and driven with selfish ambition, they're the ones who are being influenced by this particular principality. And they have a love, and it's never, ever going to be enough. No matter how much money they actually make or have, it will never be enough to satisfy. So you can only pick one or the other. Are you going to worship God, or are you going to worship mammon? Are you going to worship mammon or money? If you decide for God, living a life of God worship, it follows that you don't fuss about what's on the table at meal times or whether the clothes in your closet are in fashion. There is far more to your life than the food you put in your stomach, more than your outer appearance and the clothes that hang on your body. Look at the birds, free and unfettered, not tied down to a job description, careless in the care of God. And you count far more to Him than birds. This is such a beautiful scripture that is here. Look at the birds. Look at the fields. They don't make their own clothes. God did all that. Don't you think that's what He's saying? That He cares about you and putting clothes on you and having all that you need? God will take care of you. Just like He does the birds in the air and the flower in the field. It says, has anyone by fussing in front of a mirror even gotten taller by so much as an inch? This is so good. All this time and money wasted on fashion. Do you think it makes that much difference? Instead of looking at fashions, walk into the fields and look at the wildflowers. They never primp or shop But have you ever seen color and design quite like it? The 10 best dressed men and women in the country look shabby alongside them. This is not even Solomon, who had all this access to the most beautiful colors in the world at that time. All of the jewels and all of the gold and the silver and all of that, it could not compare to what God does out in the field. And to me, when you think about it, think of the landscape. I'm a person who loves to take in the landscape, right? Looking at a hillside or a mountainside, or I love to be by the ocean. It's incredible because we got to go on a cruise last year for our birthdays, Ray and I, and we had gone the year before with our girls. But when you look out into the ocean itself in certain parts of the world, I mean, the water is so turquoise. It's a color that I mean, I would love for my wall here in my office to be that color. And it's just, there's nothing that's going to match that. And can you imagine when we get to heaven? They say that people who have had that kind of experience of being able to take a glimpse of heaven and then return to their body said that their paints don't do it justice. The colors that we have on this earth right now don't do justice to God's splendor and his glory. So then why are we preoccupied with fashion then, is what Jesus is saying. If we know that God, who made everything, made every color, it's like, who are we doing it for? If God gives such attention to the appearance of wildflowers, most of which are never even seen, says, don't you think he'll attend to you, take pride in you, do his best for you? What I'm trying to do here is to get you to relax, to not be so preoccupied with getting, so you can respond to God's giving. People who don't know God and the way he works fuss over these things, but you know both God and how he works. Steep your life in God reality, God initiative, and God provision. Steep your life in God reality. God reality, not reality TV, okay? Not the way that reality may look on social media, because I guarantee you that's not the way it really looks. No, God reality. God initiative, that we want to have our focus initiated towards God and God provisions, that he provides for you, that he wants to care for you, that you will not go without because you're his child. You're not missing out. You'll find all your everyday human concerns will be met. Now, I want you to understand, this may not mean then that you get to live in a mansion here on this side of eternity. Maybe you're not driving the very best vehicle right now. It's okay. You're getting around. Maybe you're not eating prime rib every night, but you're still eating. He is not withholding from you. He's caring for you. Even though it may not look like the latest fashion, you're still clothed. You're still warm. Sometimes we need to get out of that perspective. We want God, right, to give us what we want. We want him to dress us how we want. God, but I want those Nikes. You need to be okay with the psyches, all right? You need to be okay and content with what you have right now. That's what he's saying. We should not be so focused on getting, but giving. Some people just live beyond their means. Why? They want to live like the Joneses so that everybody is looking. But I know people right now, that's all a facade. They probably got negative in their bank account, even though driving around in an Escalade and looks like they're living it up large. And, they probably got marital problems and children problems and work problems. And they got all these kinds of things going on, but you don't know it because their social media posts, only has what we want to put for show for everybody else. But I want to remind you today that God sees all things and he's going to take care of you. He's going to take care of you so you can lay down the pretense. You can lay down that place that doesn't allow rest to come into your life and trust in God. It says, give your entire attention to what God is doing right now and don't get worked up about what may or may not happen tomorrow. Let tomorrow handle itself, right? It says God will help you deal with whatever hard things come up when the time comes. You don't have to worry about tomorrow. I think many people, this is a breath of fresh air to know that God holds your tomorrow and you don't have to be preoccupied with what's going to happen. Just release it and give it to God, our Father, who is able, who is sovereign and seated on the throne, who cares for you, will provide for you the things that we need as humans, that as his children, though we may not have the very best in this side of heaven, I'm believing that God has prepared a place for me, a mansion and a seat at his table and crowns and the rewards that he gives for the things that sometimes I feel are mundane and insignificant, that he never forgets and takes notice. And so I don't need all the other luxuries of this life. I want to have a heavenly perspective. I hope today has been enlightening for you. I will see you tomorrow, friends. Bye.